trauma-informed framework provides the shift that allows us to effectively recognize and respond to trauma. Without it, a first responder can unwittingly become the first link in a long chain of re-traumatizing individuals, processes, and events that victims often find themselves navigating.
The police showed up and they were like, why was your son out on the sidewalk? What was going on? And he was right behind me. And there was no part of them that I felt understood, and they should have, even just seeing my physical condition at that time, known something was very wrong. And it was a moment that if they would have asked the right questions, they would have been loving, if they would have been like, there's no way, if there would have been a benefit of the doubt. No mother just lets their toddler, like that doesn't happen. If there would have been this equitable moment, this trauma-informed moment, this moment where they saw me as this mother would do anything for my children, then maybe I could have blinked the way, maybe there could have been some exchange where they came back and they got us from the house. Police need to treat these women that they respond to as if they're all queens, that they get the benefit of the doubt. Their child is running down the street, it's because of some reason. If there's something that they don't understand, it points to some other thing. Give that person the benefit of the doubt. Because if you don't, the next time you show up there, you may be rolling them out in a body bag. By the time that it got to be reporting to get out of the horrific portion of violence that it had culminated to, I no longer trusted the police, and I actually didn't trust the outside world at all. I trusted no one. He had created this dynamic where I was reliant upon him for everything, and I only trusted him. And so when you interact with, a first responder, police officer, therapist, prosecutor, people that don't understand this, the way that they can approach it, it can be interrogative, it can be cold, it can be, it can just leave you feeling dehumanized. Like you're just this vessel, they're trying to pull information out, and they don't care what the state of things are when they're done with that. They have an agenda.
The quality of our initial contact sets the tone for the rest of the victim's experience as their case moves through the criminal justice system. And when we can avoid adding smoke to their smoke detector, there's a greater chance a victim will continue to participate in the process.
It's funny because you'll see an individual who you're interacting with stop mid-sentence and say, thank you for that. I didn't expect that, because the officer, instead of telling them what was going to happen, asked them, ma'am, sir, what would you like to see happen? How would you like to see this resolved? And who better to tell you? The trauma-informed approach helps with every aspect of the criminal justice process because, one, you indoctrinate individuals. Once again, many times that victimization was their first introduction to the criminal justice system. But then you would indoctrinate them into a system that's not harsh, that's not cold, that's actually the opposite of that. It's warm, it's caring, it's understanding, and it's resourceful. I'm putting you in touch with meaningful resources that you and your family need to make it through this time. And so you're more likely to understand that this next part of the process won't re-victimize you, won't suffer you, won't put you through unnecessary suffering. We're going to make sure you understand what's about to happen, make sure that you're comfortable with the next stage of what's about to happen, and then and only then begin that next step.
When you have somebody that understands trauma, values the life that's in front of them, the lives that are impacted by the life that's in front of them, it's a completely different experience because you feel the equity between the two of you or three of you, whoever, and it makes you feel safe.
The ripple effects that come from a trauma-informed response framework reach far beyond what we in the system will ever directly see.
You probably can't estimate the positive impact you have on individuals. You hear it from them, and it's heartwarming when you do hear it from them, but you can't know the full magnitude of a small act of kindness, a small way in which you didn't move how they expected. You impacted them with empathy and warmth and understanding, and that makes a difference.
It is a golden opportunity for officers to really show their humanity. The opportunity to be able to assist, to be there, to create that feeling of safety, to be that first response in allowing that atmosphere to be eased and softened, that's golden.
When we understand how trauma shows up in individuals and communities, we begin to see more and more points of intervention to proactively build trust in relationships with those we serve. When we understand how the brain reacts to trauma, we give ourselves the language and context needed to decipher and effectively respond to the trauma of both victims and ourselves.
Now that we understand how trauma impacts memory, it helps us take a better approach to every little thing we do as it pertains to interacting with victims and witnesses. We now understand that gaps in memory are easily explained because of trauma.
When we take all of this knowledge and apply it day to day by building rapport, softening the environment, and framing our questions in a trauma-informed way, we see one more victim gain trust in the system, one more offender more likely to be held accountable, one less opportunity for trauma to be passed on.
So we've been doing Trauma Informed now. It's probably been a good 5 years, and our goal is to get our entire police department, not just our detective, trained in trauma-informed policing.
The shift is more in the way in which they approach it. They don't have to go in and be the toughest guy in the room or the one who's carried the gun. They can be the one who presents with awareness, understanding, and right.
What do we have to adjust? What do we have to do? We can't just keep doing things the same old way and expect a different result. Isn't that the definition of insanity, right? So we had to think about more creatively, all right, what are some other approaches? How do we do this better? And I think it really is incumbent for law enforcement right now to take a look at what's happening nationally and say, how do we do this better?
You have to look at all of your policies, practices, and programs through a lens of how protective they are of the public. And I actually believe that as a department, as a city or jurisdiction, that you're judged on how protective you are of individuals, particularly your most marginalized and your most vulnerable populations. So the key to having a trauma-informed approach to having a social justice approach is invaluable. When the community knows that you're protective of it, and that you create an environment that won't stand for even the slightest bit of abuse or mistreatment of the public, then that's how you build trust.
This trauma-informed framework is just the beginning of a cultural shift that allows us to effectively recognize, respond to, and heal from trauma. It will take all of us, from the rookie patrol cop to the veteran chief, constantly assessing our approach, owning our own healing, and prioritizing ongoing learning to ensure justice for victims and stop the perpetuation of trauma in our communities.
When you understand the relationship of culture and policy, and what it really is that culture eats policy all day. So it has to be the culture and not just policy words on paper. So it has to be that buy-in, that top-down buy-in. I would tell any police department or law enforcement agency or district attorney's office that was thinking about adopting the trauma-informed and trauma care model to do so. It improves the quality of your services immeasurably. It impacts the way you interact with folks who have already suffered through enough disappointment and enough harm, and to make sure that you aren't contributing to that harm. So if you're thinking about it, don't think about it, do it.